We begin with that new case, the first human-to-human case of the coronavirus here in the U.S. A couple in Chicago, the woman just back from China.
Declaring an international public health emergency is rare, but with the coronavirus spreading globally, the World Health Organization says it warrants a coordinated international response.
I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern over the global outbreak of novel coronavirus. The main reason for this declaration is not because of what is happening in China, but because of what is happening in other countries. Our greatest concern is the potential for the virus to spread to countries with weaker health systems and which are ill prepared to deal with it.
Welcome back. Scorching temperatures, high humidity and severe storms are on the way as a heat wave rolls across Australia's southeast.
Australia's summer of extreme weather shows no sign of easing, with more severe bushfire warnings today.
Sunset came at midday along the Monaro Highway. The ominous orange glow spelling a major fire emergency, as the monster blaze devouring the ACT turned its sights on New South Wales.
Last night, the dark showed just how close the flames have crept to homes in Canberra's south.
Lives and homes are under threat from 6 huge bushfires burning out of control right now around New South Wales and Canberra.
Dark as midnight, but these pictures were taken at midday. This is what bore down on the snowy Monaro region today. A vicious fire front moving quickly towards the town of Bredbo near Cooma. Behind it, 40-degree temperatures and winds in excess of 60 kilometres an hour.
Pose the most serious threat to the Australian Capital Territory, or ACT, in nearly 20 years.
By 9 a.m, it was 30 degrees. By 11, it was 40.
This fire, sparked by a defence helicopter, has burned more than 15% of the ACT, and it's now on the city's doorstep.
The fire is now 35,800 hectares in size. It does remain 2 kilometres from Tharwa and 7 kilometres from Banks.
Another nervous night ahead.
The combination of extreme heat, wind and a dry landscape will place suburbs in Canberra's south at risk in the coming days.
The unpredictable weather through the summer has made the fight more difficult. This video shows how bushfires have exploded in minutes because of sudden gusts of wind. About 90 bushfires are burning in different parts of the country. The largest are in New South Wales, where high temperatures are returning back in the 40s in the next 24 hours. The fire threatening Canberra is also moving towards New South Wales. The state's government is investigating why this fire season is so bad. This has been Australia's most devastating summer in decades. Thousands of homes have been destroyed and more than 11 million hectares of land scorched. And with summer far from over, there are many more testing days ahead.
The ACT is now facing the worst bushfire threat since the devastating fires of 2003.
Meanwhile, Sir Elton John was forced to abandon his A Day on the Green show in Victoria's Yarra Valley last night after storms caused the stage to flood. It was about 95 minutes into the concert when the rain and hail hit.
Port Lincoln underwater, streets resembling rapids. And cars swept away, putting lives in danger. In just a matter of minutes, the town was awash, the water quickly rising.
So this is the state of affairs at the moment. This morning as flash flooding strikes the state, with forecasters warning more torrential rain is on the way and fears of a potential tropical cyclone.
In the state's mid-north, it was dust storms creating dangers.
There was one very lucky train driver who was warned just in time as a railway actual bridge was taken out, and he actually pulled up just on the bridge, so very lucky.
Within the space of 12 hours, New South Wales experienced nearly all the elements. Hail in Western Sydney. The entire golf course in Warren became one big bunker.
The slow-moving walls stretched more than 300 kilometres. Forbes in the south, through Parkes, Dubbo and to Nyngan in the north. In Dubbo, the sight was enough to scare the wits out of a flock of birds. The main highway into Nyngan, looking more like a road trip to Mars. The driver wisely pulling over, while another pushed their luck, disappearing into a dark red void.
Sydney has seen it all today as a thunderstorm cell tore across the city. And tonight a warning, there's more on the way.
The heat and wind brought bushfire smoke, which turned into a dust storm that choked Sydney.
Residents in Sydney are waking up to dust clouds this morning. Windows and cars across the city are covered in red dirt. It's the result of a mega dust storm which has smothered towns in western New South Wales.
Today, the Caribbean was hit by one of the most powerful earthquakes on record in that region, magnitude 7.7. It was centered in the sea between Jamaica and Cuba, and it was felt 450 miles away in Miami.
7.7 magnitude quake erupting along the same fault line that's affected Puerto Rico in recent weeks.
In the middle of the Caribbean,
exit the house!
A powerful earthquake rattled the region.
Guys, there was just an earthquake.
Panicked people running from their homes and offices, creating sinkholes, sparking tsunami warnings across the region and several aftershocks. The quake even felt in South Florida.
Big earthquake going on, look at this.
In nearby Cayman Islands, the pool water seen rattling. The last month has been an extremely active period for earthquakes in the Caribbean. Today's quake comes just 2 weeks after a series of devastating earthquakes in Puerto Rico, which sits along the same tectonic plates.
To Cuba, where rattled locals said quake was felt strongly. In Jamaica, workers evacuated office buildings in New Kingston. Same on the coast of Mexico, where amateur video shows crowds waiting on the streets for the all clear.
But there is concern about aftershocks, especially after just hours later, a 6.1 struck the area.
You see like a subtle sway of the other buildings just kind of like doing this.
After a powerful earthquake rocked Turkey, the magnitude 6.8 quake struck last night in eastern Elazig province.
After the deadly 6.7 magnitude quake struck just before 9 p.m. last night. The moment caught on camera during the evening news. The damage leaving thousands homeless.
In the immediate aftermath of the quake, panic and confusion as first responders rushed to the scene. By sunrise, the scale of the disaster was clear. Neighborhoods devastated, homes flattened by the sheer force of the quake.
Turkey frequently suffers quakes because it sits on a fault line, but this one was especially powerful. Hundreds of aftershocks were felt, some as far as Iran and Syria. Tonight, the search for survivors continues.
The other news this Friday night, the U.S. now declaring a public health emergency amid this outbreak of the coronavirus across the globe. We have now witnessed the largest spike yet in a 24-hour period since this outbreak began.
And is taking an historic step to try and contain the virus. U.S. citizens who flew from China are being quarantined. That is the first time that's happened in decades.
It comes as the World Health Organization tonight has now declared the outbreak a global health emergency after a tenfold jump in cases in just a week. And in a sign authorities are taking this very seriously, a cruise ship has been quarantined in an Italian harbor. 7,000 people on board were waiting to find out whether a sick passenger from China had the coronavirus.
Here in the U.S., what authorities have been predicting for more than a week has happened in Chicago, the nation's first person-to-person transmission of coronavirus. A man in his 60s got it from his wife. Outside China, there are now 98 confirmed cases of people sick with this respiratory disease, and 6 of those cases are here in America.
Wuhan remains on lockdown, the city a ghost town.
For China, the WHO only had praise for their efforts to contain the virus, but it is still spreading fast.
Tonight, in a rare move, the U.S. declaring coronavirus a public health emergency. President Trump barring foreign nationals who pose a transmission risk from entering the country. In effect, a temporary ban on nearly all Chinese travelers, the world's most populous country. Planes from China will only be allowed to land at 7 U.S. airports starting Sunday. Americans returning from the hot zone could be subject to 14 days of quarantine. Already in isolation, 195 Americans who chartered from the epicenter of the outbreak.
Inside China, an epidemic. More than 8,000 people are sick, more cases than the SARS outbreak that swept through that country in 2003. Hundreds of Americans are still stuck there trying to get home.
Well, authorities say that the symptoms are fever, cough, and shortness of breath, and they're really paying attention to anyone who has traveled to or from the affected region. But they point out that these symptoms are very similar to the flu, which has been much more deadly. They say in the U.S. this season, more than 8,000 estimated deaths in the U.S. this flu season alone.
For two leaders fighting for their political lives, there was no better time to announce a peace plan.
Today, Israel takes a big step towards peace.
Pitching a Middle East plan, critics say, is more about politics than peace.
They say it's the toughest deal ever to make.
This is a historic day. On this day, you became the first world leader to recognize Israel's sovereignty over areas in Judea and Samaria that are vital to our security and central to our heritage.
The soaring music and off-camera voiceover had all the hallmarks of a campaign video, promising Israeli sovereignty in the occupied West Bank. But for Benjamin Netanyahu, a day after what he had termed a history-making event in Washington, the brakes have been at least momentarily applied.
Mr. Trump sold his plan as the best bet for compromise to the 70-plus year conflict.
My vision presents a win-win opportunity for both sides.
But the proposal crafted by President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, was considered dead on arrival since it was written without the Palestinians.
Protesting today in Gaza because the plan would give Israel more of their land. A future Palestinian state reduced to a patchwork connected by roads and tunnels. Israel would control all of Jerusalem with a future Palestinian capital on the outskirts of the city.
The plan would allow for a Palestinian state only if they meet certain tests over time. Israel could continue annexing its settlements in the West Bank, and Jerusalem would be recognized as Israel's undivided capital. Thousands of Palestinians filled the streets in Gaza City, burning pictures of Trump and Netanyahu and holding signs that read, "Palestine is not for sale."
The president had already moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem.
The consequences of this deal, with its provisions for Israeli annexation, for the literal walling off of any future Palestinian state from the heart of East Jerusalem, could be felt for years. But here, in the midst of yet another Israeli election campaign, the timeline being focused on is much shorter. The next 32 days until Israelis go to the polls again.
In Gaza, they marched on the streets to protest what many see as a one-sided offer to favor Israel rather than the Palestinians.
We say to Trump and the American administration that our people are united behind President Abbas and our Palestinian leadership. We reject this plan, a plan of shame that has nothing to offer Palestinians.
The Trump administration's Peace to Prosperity plan would allow Israeli settlements to possibly be annexed into Israel. Included in the triumphal announcement in the White House on Tuesday was the president's son-in-law and a senior advisor. He's part of the American team working on the Middle East plan for the past 3 years. His advice to the Palestinian leadership?
They rejected the plan before they saw it. They thought it wasn't going to be as good as it was. So I think they look quite foolish today. Also, one of the great ironies is they keep saying they want to be a state. If you're a state, you don't call for days of rage when you don't get what you want.
The status of Jerusalem is always contentious in Israel and for the Palestinians.
Is one of the best pieces of foreign policy work that I've seen. This plan actually anchors the entire discussion in reality. It grounds things appropriately. It talks about getting people dignity for life. It talks about Israeli security. It really covers pretty much everything that you need to orient the region in a proper direction.
Tonight, the phones lighting up on our newsroom tonight because of this sight in the skies over Southern California, and that appears to be a meteor there. It was seen by a lot of folks tonight from the San Fernando Valley all the way to San Diego. A lot of viewers sharing their video with us. Most people say it first appeared to be a large fireball and then broke up into several smaller pieces, all of them glowing in the sky until they dropped out of sight.
At 5:15 this morning, spotted over Sydney, Wollongong and beyond, a strange light slowly moving out to sea.
Definitely not a plane and way too big for a drone.
It was what the camera didn't see that made it even more intriguing.
I could see about 20 to 30 lights, or windows as they were.
Bro, what the is this?
It's not the first time it's happened.
Bro, what the that is crazy.
This was California last year. The reaction in the UK was more subdued.
Blimey.
A distinct line of lights.
That's amazing.
Slowly making its way across space.
And here comes a few more.
The mystery also spread to Canada.
They're all in a straight line and they're moving.
Video has been posted from the Netherlands.
Oh, aliens! Aliens! Ignition, liftoff.
But for the more down-to-earth, the answer is literally rocket science. Earlier today, SpaceX launched 60 satellites in one go.
That's gorgeous. That's those 60 Starlink satellites successfully separating from stage 2.
Hundreds of satellites deployed for low-cost internet to help fund the mission to Mars and helping cement the company's reputation for heavenly displays.
Finally, take a look at what stargazers in Finland are calling a brand new kind of northern lights.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is new, but we found out about it, or the science community found out about it, through the coming together of amateur enthusiasts, a Facebook group, and science. So how significant is this?
That's really significant, because we used to tend that we find these things with like very expensive and huge satellite missions, for instance, or very scientific instruments. And it's very interesting that the cameras now from ground, from amateur photographers and so on, are so sharp and so full of details that they can actually tell us new things. And that is very interesting. And I really want to congratulate the Finnish group by. I think the most impressive thing here is exactly the collaboration between the scientific community and the citizen scientist community, working together with this Facebook group and sharing these photos and being able to recognize that, okay, this is actually something new, which then which they can share with the scientists, which can put it into context in the atmosphere and which processes that can cause this phenomena and so on.
And so, Anders, I was just going to say, it's great that we have such powerful mobile phones now that can do this.
Yeah.
So we've given a basic explainer there to our audience, but can you elaborate on these findings?
Well, it's very interesting because normally the precipitation from space is what caused the aurora with electrons coming in, and what is happening here is that an atmospheric wave coming up and getting trapped between these layers, as you say, is causing the atmosphere to be sort of going in a wave mode. So it is different what it hits in one moment to the next, and it's altering over a little time as the wave goes on, and this creates a new pattern that we haven't seen before, because normally we get these arc-like shapes which are extend in height, but these are very narrow in height.
And tell us, when is a good time to see these new auroral dunes, and where? I've been to Norway and I did not see the aurora borealis. I missed them.
Well, to see the aurora borealis in general is you just have to have some activity in the night sky and some clear skies. But this new phenomenon is actually rather rare, it seems like, which is probably why it has taken us so long to actually see it, because they only find examples in October, so it's possible that this is only during the equinoxes that this phenomenon exists. And it's also pretty faint. Even though you see it very clear in the pictures, it might be difficult to see with a naked eye, or at least you have to have a keen eye to see this separated from the aurora itself. Yeah.
Do you think there's still a lot more that you don't know, that the science community doesn't know about this beautiful phenomenon, the aurora borealis?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because and this result just emphasizes that there are a lot more to discover. That we still in 2020 can make new discovery about this phenomena, which we see with our naked eye, and we still find new features and new things. And I think this emphasizes that there is a lot more. This result emphasizes that there is a lot more to discover.
Also tonight, a stunning, larger-than-life tribute to Kobe Bryant has popped up here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, check this out. Pleasanton-based New Ground Technology created this 115-foot-tall, 92-feet wide image of the NBA legend on a baseball field.